A world of human origins. For centuries, humanity has asked a single question: who are we, and where do we come from? The story of human origins is a tapestry woven with countless threads. Threads of discovery, bones buried in the earth, and mysteries yet to be solved. For over 100 years, scientists have searched caves, deserts, and jungles for clues to our past. They uncovered fossils of Neanderthals in Europe who lived alongside our ancestors. They found the remains of Australopithecus in Africa, like the famous Lucy, revealing the dawn of upright walking. From Homo erectus to Cro-Magnon, every fossil added a new piece to the puzzle. And yet, the picture was far from complete. By the end of the 20th century, most scientists believed they had a clear map of human evolution. Africa as the birthplace of modern humans, a spread across the globe, replacing earlier species. A handful of extinct cousins, like Neanderthals and Denisovans. But evolution is rarely simple. Hidden in caves and jungles, secrets still waited. Legends among islanders spoke of small people, creatures who lived deep in the forests, who appeared and disappeared mysteriously. Many dismissed these as myths, bedtime stories told by elders. But myths often carry echoes of truth. In the early 2000s, a group of archaeologists set out to explore Flores, a remote Indonesian island. They weren't expecting a revolution. They were searching for clues about the migration of ancient humans, remnants of stone tools, perhaps. What they discovered instead would shake the foundations of science. It would challenge the very definition of what it means to be human. This is the story of a species long forgotten, a species that lived at the edge of myth and reality, a species scientists would come to call Homo Floresiensis, but the world would remember it as the Hobbit. Flores Island, the land of mystery. Far away from the busy cities of the world lies an island that seems untouched by time. Flores, part of Indonesia's sprawling archipelago. Surrounded by turquoise seas and volcanic peaks, Flores is both beautiful and mysterious. It is a land where towering volcanoes breathe smoke into the sky, where thick jungles hide rare animals, and where ancient legends linger in the minds of villagers. For generations, the local people have told stories of small, human-like beings living in the forests. They called them the Abu Gogo, meaning the grandmother who eats anything. According to the tales, these creatures were short, hairy, and had long arms. They whispered and mumbled instead of speaking clearly. Sometimes they helped humans, sometimes they caused mischief. And then, one day, they vanished. Most outsiders dismissed these stories as folklore, nothing more. But in many cultures, myths grow from seeds of truth. And Flores was a place where myths could hide in plain sight. From a scientific perspective, Flores was already unusual. Unlike most islands, it was home to animals that seemed out of place. Komodo dragons, giant lizards that look like they belong in prehistoric times. Strange species of giant rats and pygmy elephants. Evidence of stone tools that suggested humans, or something like humans, had lived here tens of thousands of years ago. Archaeologists were fascinated. How did humans reach such a remote island? Flores lies across deep ocean channels that even the lowest sea levels could not expose. To get here, ancient people would have needed boats, rafts, or some form of sea crossing skill, something scientists had long believed early humans lacked. In 2001, an Indonesian-Australian team of scientists launched a project to uncover the island's secrets. They focused on Liang Bua Cave, a vast limestone cavern hidden among the lush green hills. The cave's walls rose high like the inside of a cathedral, and its floor was layered with centuries of sediment, animal bones, and fragments of stone. Their mission was simple: dig deep into the earth and search for clues about early humans in Southeast Asia. They expected to find stone tools left behind by Homo erectus, the first great traveler of the human family. Homo erectus had spread from Africa across Asia more than 1 million years ago, and Flores was thought to be one of the last places they reached. But as the archaeologists chipped away at the soil, brushing aside layers of history, they began to uncover something they did not expect. The bones they found were not from Homo erectus. They were not from modern humans either. The shape was different. The size was shocking. What lay beneath the soil of Flores was the beginning of a mystery that would change the timeline of human history forever. The 2003 discovery. It was September 2003 when the excavation at Amwaa Cave reached a turning point. For weeks, the Indonesian, Australian research team had carefully dug through layers of soil, unearthing stone tools and animal remains. The air inside the cave was heavy with dust, the silence broken only by the scrape of trowels and brushes. On one particular day, archaeologist Thomas Satikna and his colleagues uncovered something strange. A fragment of bone emerged, delicate, fragile, yet unmistakably human. As more earth was cleared, a skull began to take shape. At first, the team thought it must belong to a child. The skull was small, much smaller than any adult human. But the teeth told a different story. They were worn down like those of an adult who had lived for years. As the excavation continued, more bones appeared: an arm, a leg, a pelvis. Piece by piece, the skeleton was revealed, lying in the earth as if frozen in time. When the scientists finally assembled the bones, they realized they were looking at something astonishing. The skeleton was of an adult female, yet she stood barely 1 meter tall, just over 3 feet. Her skull was tiny, holding a brain only about the size of a chimpanzee's. But the shape of her face, the structure of her teeth, and the design of her feet told a remarkable story. She was human, but not our kind of human. The team gave her a name, LB1, Amwaa 1. But soon, the world would call her something else, the Hobbit, after the small, mythical beings from J.R.R. Tolkien's tales. News of the discovery spread quickly. When the first images of LB1's skull were shown to the scientific world, the reaction was explosive. Here was a human unlike any other, tiny, yet clearly capable of using tools. A species that no one had ever seen before. Could it really be possible that another kind of human had lived on Earth, not tens of thousands, but only 18,000 years ago? That meant they existed at the same time as modern humans, even as civilizations were beginning to rise. For the archaeologists standing in Amwaa Cave, the moment was overwhelming. They knew they were staring into the face of history, into the eyes of a species thought lost forever. The year 2003 would be remembered not just as another excavation, but as the year when the story of human evolution was rewritten. The Hobbit emerges. The skeleton of LB1, carefully lifted from the cave floor, was unlike anything the team had ever seen. Once cleaned and studied, the bones painted the portrait of a creature both familiar and strange, a human, yet entirely different. She was a fully grown adult female, about 30 years old at the time of her death, but her height was just over 3 feet. Her body mass was estimated at only 25 kilograms, no larger than a modern child. The most shocking feature was her skull. Inside it, her brain measured about 400 cubic centimeters, barely 1/3 the size of a modern human brain and closer to that of a chimpanzee. By the logic of science, such a small brain should not have allowed advanced behaviors. And yet, surrounding her skeleton were stone tools, sharp blades, points, and scrapers that required skill to craft. Some were even sophisticated enough to suggest planning and coordination. Her face was flat and human-like, with small teeth and a delicate jaw. Her arms were long compared to her body, her shoulders sloped differently, and her feet were unusually long, earning her the nickname the clown-footed Hobbit. She walked upright, but not quite like us. Her stride was shorter, slower, almost a shuffle. To hold her bones in their hands was like holding a paradox. A creature small enough to be mistaken for a child, yet old enough to carve tools, hunt animals, and perhaps even control fire. The team concluded that this was not a diseased or deformed modern human. Instead, she represented an entirely new species of human. They gave her a scientific name, Homo Floresiensis, the human from Flores. But what astonished scientists even more was her age. Carbon dating of the cave sediments revealed that LB1 lived only about 18,000 years ago. That was shockingly recent. Modern humans had already spread across the globe by then. Neanderthals had just disappeared in Europe. And yet, on a small island in Indonesia, another species of human was still surviving, tiny, hidden, forgotten. The discovery forced scientists to ask daring questions. How many other species of humans once lived alongside us? Could myths of small forest beings be memories of real encounters? And most importantly, what exactly made us the only humans to survive? The Hobbit had emerged not as a figure of legend, but as a flesh-and-bone reality, one that would ignite both wonder and controversy across the scientific world. The scientific shockwave. When the news of Homo Floresiensis was first published in October 2004, the world of science was thrown into chaos. The discovery, announced in the prestigious journal Nature, traveled like wildfire across headlines. Newspapers called it the greatest find in human evolution in 50 years. Others described it as a real-life hobbit, sparking curiosity beyond the scientific community. For anthropologists and archaeologists, it was a shock to the system. For decades, they had believed the timeline of human evolution was relatively well mapped. Australopithecus in Africa millions of years ago. Homo erectus spreading across Asia. Homo sapiens rising in Africa, then expanding worldwide, replacing all others. But Homo floresiensis didn't fit. Here was a species with a brain the size of a grapefruit, smaller than a chimpanzee's, yet capable of making tools, hunting animals, and surviving until shockingly recent times. Evolutionary wisdom had long taught that bigger brains meant greater intelligence. But the Hobbit defied that rule. The scientific world split into camps. Globe showing Europe, Africa, the enthusiasts. Some researchers were thrilled. They saw Homo floresiensis as proof that human evolution was far more diverse and complicated than anyone had imagined. For them, the Hobbit was not a curiosity. It was a window into the richness of our family tree. It suggested that, not long ago, multiple species of humans coexisted on Earth. Test tube, the skeptics. Others were unconvinced. Critics argued that LB1 was not a new species at all, but rather a modern human with a disease or genetic disorder. Some suggested microcephaly, a condition that causes small brains and short stature. Others pointed to Laron's syndrome or cretinism, conditions linked to growth problems. The debate grew fierce. Conferences turned into battlegrounds of ideas. Was Homo floresiensis a true human cousin, or just a tragic anomaly? The media frenzy. Meanwhile, the public imagination was captivated. The word Hobbit stuck, and suddenly everyone, from journalists to school children, was talking about this tiny human. Documentaries aired, magazine covers splashed the discovery, and museums requested casts of the bones. The Hobbit had become a celebrity. But behind the excitement was a deeper, unsettling thought. If Homo floresiensis had survived until just 18,000 years ago, could they have lived even more recently? Could their presence be linked to the ancient myths of Flores villagers? Were they truly gone, or could traces of them still remain, hidden in forests and caves? The discovery of Homo floresiensis was more than just a scientific milestone. It was a mirror held up to humanity, reminding us that we were never truly alone in our journey. We had cousins, competitors, and companions, many of whom had vanished into extinction, leaving us as the last humans standing. The Hobbit had rewritten history, but the debate over her true identity was only beginning. The debate begins. The discovery of Homo floresiensis sparked one of the fiercest debates in anthropology. On one side were the supporters, who argued the Hobbit was a unique species. They pointed to her unusual body proportions, brain shape, and primitive wrist bones, features too distinct to be explained by disease. On the other side were the skeptics. They insisted LB1 was a modern human suffering from disorders like microcephaly or cretinism caused by iodine deficiency. According to them, The Hobbit was not a new species, but simply a sick individual. The arguments grew heated. Some conferences ended in shouting matches. Scientific papers were published rapidly, each claiming to have the final word. But the evidence kept mounting in favor of a new species. Additional remains were uncovered: jaw bones, arm bones, and teeth from other individuals. These are consistent with LB1, showing she was not alone. There was an entire population of hobbits. By the late 2000s, more scientists began to accept that Homo Floresiensis was real. The Hobbit was no myth, no sickness, but a lost cousin who had once walked beside us. Inside the Hobbit's world, to understand Homo Floresiensis, we must imagine Flores Island as it was tens of thousands of years ago. It was a land of extremes, volcanoes rumbling in the distance, dense jungles, and rivers cutting through valleys. The island was home to unusual creatures found nowhere else. Stegodon, a dwarf elephant species, small but still large enough to be hunted. Giant rats, some as big as cats. And the fearsome Komodo dragon, a predator that could easily overpower the small hobbits. The hobbits were hunters and gatherers. They crafted stone tools to cut meat and process plants. Evidence suggests they hunted young stegodons, scavenged carcasses, and perhaps used fire. Despite their small brains, their survival skills were remarkable. To live on such a dangerous island required cooperation, intelligence, and adaptability. Flores was their entire world, isolated, challenging, yet rich with resources. For thousands of years, the hobbits thrived here, unnoticed by the rest of humanity. Tools, fire, and culture. Archaeologists found hundreds of stone tools in Liangbua Cave, some dating back over 90,000 years. These were not crude rocks, but carefully shaped blades and points. The hobbits used them to cut meat, carve wood, and butcher animals like the dwarf stegodon. There is also evidence of fire. Ashes and burned bones suggest they controlled it for cooking and warmth. Fire was crucial, especially on cold nights inside the cave. Though no artwork or ornaments were discovered, their tool-making and survival strategies hint at shared culture. They may have lived in small groups, cooperated in hunting, and passed down knowledge across generations. This raised a fascinating question. How could such a tiny-brained species think and plan like this? The Hobbit challenged the old idea that only big brains meant intelligence. In their simple tools and fires, we see the spark of human creativity, small beings leaving a big mark on history. Extinction and survival theories. Homo Floresiensis survived on Flores for tens of thousands of years, but eventually they disappeared. Scientists propose several theories. Volcanic eruptions may have destroyed their habitat. Flores is volcanic, and massive eruptions could have wiped out populations. Rising sea levels may have isolated them further, cutting off resources. Human arrival. Modern humans reached Flores about 50,000 years ago. Competition for food, hunting pressure, or disease might have led to the hobbits' extinction. Despite their disappearance, their story is a reminder of resilience. They survived in isolation for millennia, adapting to a harsh environment, before the forces of nature and history caught up. Even today, legends of Abu Gogo echo in the villages, whispering the memory of a tiny human cousin lost to time. Controversy and acceptance. After years of debate, most scientists finally recognize Homo Floresiensis as a true species. Multiple skeletons confirmed LB1 was not a deformed human, but a separate branch of the human family tree. DNA studies proved difficult due to tropical conditions, but bone structures, teeth, and tools supported their uniqueness. The Hobbit became an accepted part of human evolution, a reminder that our family tree is bushier and more complex than previously thought. The discovery challenged long-held assumptions. Intelligence is not just a matter of brain size. Isolation can produce remarkable adaptations. Myths may contain hidden truths about ancient humans. By the 2010s, textbooks began including Homo Floresiensis, cementing its place in science and in human imagination. Impact on human evolution. The discovery of Homo floresiensis forced scientists to rethink how humans evolved. Previously, evolution was seen as a straight ladder, from small-brained ancestors to modern humans. The Hobbit showed it was more like a branching tree, with different species coexisting and adapting in unique ways. Key impacts include recognition that small-brained humans could survive and thrive, evidence of island dwarfism, where species shrink over generations due to limited resources, a reminder that modern humans were not the only intelligent species alive in the recent past. The Hobbit reshaped our understanding of humanity, not just where we came from, but how diverse and adaptable humans can be. Legacy of Homo floresiensis. Though Homo floresiensis disappeared thousands of years ago, their legacy endures. They remind us that human evolution is messy, surprising, and full of mysteries. The Hobbit challenges the assumption that intelligence is measured by size and complexity alone. Culturally, The Hobbit captured the imagination of the world. Documentaries, books, and exhibitions introduced people to this tiny human cousin, bridging the gap between science and myth. The legends of Abu Gogo gained new significance, suggesting that folklore may preserve memories of real beings. Scientifically, the discovery continues to influence research. Anthropologists search for more evidence of isolated human species. Evolutionary biology explores the effects of isolation and environment on species development. Archaeologists study tool-making and survival strategies of small-brained humans. Homo floresiensis stands as a symbol of resilience and adaptability, tiny in stature but massive in the impact on human understanding. Their story reminds us that our world is richer than we imagine, and that even the smallest beings can leave a profound mark on history. As we look to the caves and jungles of Flores, we are reminded the past is never truly gone. It whispers to us through bones, tools, and stories, urging humanity to keep exploring, questioning, and imagining.